all set, and you're all good to go, Legend.
All right, I'll try not to be blinded by the light.
Yes, stand over here.
Stand over here?
Get the camera.
Oh, sweet. Hi, guys. Too tall. I'll back up.
All right.
Hello, everyone. My name's Elijah Heilmon, and I'm here to present to you about cyber warfare. I didn't know that was in the way over. Oh, yeah. Hopefully nothing. That's not on me. No, that's not even where mine is. What the heck is?
Click zoom. Click zoom real quick. Oh, yeah, right here?
Yeah,
Click
that's when.
It's on the stream laptop.
Ah.
Really?
That's on my laptop?
Oh no.
Oh, it is. It's on the stream.
Ah, so that wasn't me. All right,
That should be okay.
that should be high enough. We're good. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get started. There we go. So as I said, my name is Elijah Heilmon. You might recognize me on Discord as Heilmon. I know, super creative. I'm a third year, technically fourth year. Don't ask me how that works. I can't tell you. I'm an SFS scholar and MITRE intern. And I'm a participant in the Reversing, WESIS interest groups, and a club called Crew, which is a Christian fellowship on campus. My main fields of interest in cybersecurity are malware analysis and digital forensics. I actually got to work with MITRE on a malware analysis project this past summer, but that's a whole different presentation. So, what is cyber warfare? Cyber warfare has been defined as the use of cyber attacks against a nation state causing it significant harm. This can include up to physical warfare, disruption of systems, or loss of life. Some examples include taking down critical infrastructure using, just whether it be by finding a vulnerability or using malware, committing cyber espionage or theft that steals national secrets, or using disinformation campaigns to cause chaos. So how does cyber warfare sum up against what we know as traditional warfare or physical warfare? Starting with the similarities, one thing they have in common is that they're both extremely destructive. Traditional war, I don't really need to give you an example, just look in any history book. But cyber warfare, most people don't often see how destructive it can be. It can be very destructive. In Ukraine in 2015 and 16, they state-sponsored hackers actually caused blackouts across the city. In the U.S., we actually had some researchers destroy an engine, make it blow up, by hacking into it. And if you even just think about Stuxnet, that's a very small-scale example, but we destroyed several hundred centrifuges. Don't quote me on that number. We destroyed a lot of centrifuges there. But that's, when you think about it, just target the right system and you can cause massive destruction. Also, both cyber warfare and physical warfare have their own set of warriors. Physical, traditional, they have soldiers, Marines, Navy SEAL. Cyber, and I hate this term, have cyber warriors. Yeah, it's the birth child of two buzzwords. Yeah. But the principle still remains. We have our own set of warrior. I don't like that. I don't like saying it. We have our engineers fighting in these wars. Another similarity we have is cost. Physical warfare, just look at our military spending budget. It takes a lot to buy and build weapons, vehicles, bases, and soldiers. Again, the U.S. is one of the top spenders in their military across the world, just billions. It's cyber warfare along the same lines. You have to think of it. Look at your tuition. That tells you how much training costs. Also, we have to buy hardware and software. And also, if you just look at the aftermath, we all learned this in CSEC 101, that if they when they talk about the aftermath of a cybersecurity incident, they're like, oh, the price is incalculable, but it kind of is. It's hard to value this data. And lastly, both cyber warfare and physical warfare can have civilian casualties. Like I said, if we can blow up an engine, all you have to do is blow up the right engine and people die. And like most war, it's not restricted to those fighting in it, unfortunately. Now, moving on to the differences. This is kind of going back to the warriors thing. How we train physical warfare soldiers versus cyber warfare soldiers is significantly different. Like, the Army, Marines, they focused on the physical aspects of the body mainly. They do some mental training, but it's mainly endurance. Cyber warriors, however, have to train mainly focused on mental. We're not worried about if you can run a mile in a certain, 2 minutes. I don't know. Haven't looked at a field test in a while. But we have to focus a lot on gaining knowledge and wisdom about certain subject areas, like software, systems, and so on. Another difference would be the consequences of combat. Soldier goes out, they can sustain mental trauma, lose limbs, and even die. Cyber warriors, however, I doubt any cybersecurity engineers ever gone to work and worried about losing legs, But the worst they'll probably get is either being fired, fined, and publicly humiliated. Lastly, when we're just comparing the two, physical warfare typically, at this point in time, has had significantly higher casualty counts with regards to both the combatants and non-combatants compared to cyber warfare. Now I say as of this moment because cyber warfare is getting more and more destructive as time goes on, and I can't predict where it'll go. So there is a little bit of a gray area between the two, because you can use them to support one another. For example, cyber warfare can be used to support physical warfare, obviously. And one example of this would be a couple years ago at this point during the Ukraine-Russian conflict or war, I forget the exact name, where Russian hackers actually compromised an Android app that the Ukraine artillery units were actually using to help, as you can see here, that help process target information to actually locate these artillery units and then target them more effectively. On the flip side, physical warfare can actually be used to assist cyber warfare as well. Just who here was here 2 years ago to participate in ISTS? Do you guys remember the FBI in that?
Yes.
That's a very, that's the best low-scale, real-world example I can think of. At the time, the FBI would come around, chase down, arrest, and interrogate blue teamers, from the stories I've heard. And this disrupted their efforts to start up their services again and repair their systems. That's a very low-scale example, but that's the best real-world one I could think of off the bat. A theoretical case could be drone striking a communication center so that collaboration can't take, so that agencies can't collaborate when they're trying to fix fix the issues caused by a cyber warfare attack. But again, they can stand separately. Obviously, physical warfare has been here since before computers. Cyber warfare, one example of that would be the Ukraine Blackouts, which I'm about to get into. So, as I was just referencing before, in Ukraine in 2015-2016, there were major power outages that blanketed cities. This was caused by a group called Sandworm. You might know them as Voodoo Bear, Iron Viking, or Unit 4455. This was a Russian cyber military group that, in these instances, were targeting the power grids. Now, something I should note about this, kind of referencing the whole civilian thing earlier, as power grids are civilian infrastructure. Now, as a society very reliant on technology, as I can see almost 3 laptops per table here, losing power is a very bad thing. For example, communications can go down. Technology can be damaged. Water can be contaminated, or you just don't have any. Food can go bad. Medical care gets prevented because, even if hospitals have backup power, that very much limits what they can do. And lastly, no heat. Now, for some more context, at the time these happened, Ukraine and Russia, as I said before, were in the middle of a war. There's wounded soldiers, and the nights there actually went down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So, restricted medical care, no heat, 0-degree nights, war, that is a very not good combination. Now, there were no reports like saying like, oh, this many people died, but I think it's irresponsible to say no one died as a result of these power outages, considering the factors involved. Now, professionals at the time said that these attacks were very restrained. So that begs the question: if 6 hours is restrained, what's full out look like? Is it a day, week, month, forever? Do they have to build new power grids? Hopefully, we never have to find out, but I fear someday we will. Now, there's a lot of misconceptions and questions with cyber warfare, and here I have a few of the major ones I wanted to hit on. First is that people think that what happens in cyber stays in cyber. Cyber attacks only indirectly affect the real world. Like with a breach, you worry about your information getting out, yes, but it's not a direct attack. That's not true anymore, as I already talked about. You can cause blackouts, you can blow up engines, you can... What was the third example? One thing I actually saw online was that like you can target pacemakers and insulin pumps. That's not in cyber anymore. You can go out. And that's what I'm thinking of. Stuxnet. That wasn't restrained to cyber. We straight up destroyed equipment. Another misconception is that some people think that a cyber attack cannot count as an act of war, simply because it doesn't meet the criteria. Now, the three criteria are, as you can probably see, is it potentially lethal? Is it instrumental? And is it political? Just referring to the blackout, can it be lethal? I'd say, again, lack of medical care, no heat in a freezing night, that could be lethal, in my opinion, so check. Is it instrumental? Well, it depends on what the purpose of the attack was. In this case, if we all lose power and we don't know why or anything about it, I would say that can cause chaos. I think we've had, I forget where, but there was a major power outage, there were riots, everything. So can it cause chaos and fear? It's a means to an end? Yep, check. Lastly, is it political? Well, seeing how Russia and Ukraine were at war at the time and just did not like each other, I could say that's political, especially during the middle of a war. So check. So I think that means cyber warfare can qualify as an act of war, just depending on the act. Now, one question that people often ask is that, how do we label this? There's a lot of buzzwords going around. There's cyber terrorism, cyber espionage, cyber theft, cyber this, cyber that. So how do we distinguish them? The way I use it is looking back on the previous definition we had in the earlier slides and looking at three factors. Who did it, why, and who was it done to? Now, as we mentioned, part of the definition before was it had to be against a nation state. So if you're targeting, let's say, Sony, not sure if it qualifies, but if you're targeting the US government, I think it might. So that's one factor. Another is, what's the purpose? Now, part of the definition said was to cause significant harm. So if you're just doing it to make a quick buck and you just happen to steal some personal information, can that cause harm? Yeah, but we're looking for significant harm. So if you steal, I don't know, let's say national secrets, I think that can cause a lot of significant harm depending on how it's used and who it's used by. Lastly, who done it? Like I said, if it's just some guy in his mom's basement who just happened to find a flaw, don't really think it's considered a cyber warfare attack. But if it's like a government hacking group, I think it does. And lastly, are we in a cyber war now? Now, I should have started this talk with this, but I am no expert on this matter. This is just the results of my research and my opinion on it. I think we are. But it's hard to recognize because it's not like the traditional war. It's not like when World War II where we heard about everything and it was posted on the front page of every news article you could see whenever a battle happened or news came back from the front lines. It's much more passive. And also, just who was doing IRSec 2 weeks back? 2 people, not 3. They all left. They're like, it's research. Anyway, when you were doing blue teaming, You weren't exactly like going key to key with the red team. You were responding to things they did who knows how long ago. And in that case, it's not very up and front, very active. Yeah, you're stressed, you're currently trying to do as much as you can in the moment, but it's not, again, it's not key for key, it's not blow for blow. It's not a quick exchange, it's responses. Now, as I was saying, this can be very passive. It can be very much in the background. It's not always the front page news. And it can look like one of two things. It can be, not one of two. It can look like one of a few things. It could be destroying critical infrastructure or stealing national secrets, as I mentioned. Or it could be more defensive. It can be strengthening systems and protecting information. But like I said, it's not very public. It's not very front page news. One, we don't always hear about it right away because either, one, the industry doesn't know what happened yet. They have time before they have to report it because they could be investigating, or three, they just don't tell us. It happens. But yeah. Now, in the end, after doing all this, I noticed a few little things. One, physical and cyber warfare, not too different. Don't get me wrong, they're not perfectly alike, but they have both their similarities and differences. Two, they can be separate, but they can also be used to complement each other. Another thing is that in the right circumstances, in my opinion, I think cyber warfare can be significantly worse than any physical war we've ever had. Now, as I mentioned before, I am not a topic expert. This is just my research on this, and this is just the tip of a very complex iceberg. Now, a cybersecurity researcher in Ukraine, whose name I couldn't dream of pronouncing, said, cyberspace is not itself a target. It's a medium. Use your imagination. Now, for me, that doesn't take much to imagine what horrifying tragedies can happen through cyberspace. As I mentioned, I believe it could be much worse given time or the right circumstances. But this is only the beginning. As time goes on, things will get worse, but it also gives us time to get better. It gives us time to learn more, train more, and discover new things. It's only the beginning. Now, any questions? What, really?
Yeah.
You wait. Oh.
There was a fly, but.
Oh.
So, how would you classify, for example, a hospital is hit by ransomware? Would you attribute that to a nation-state attack? Is that a significant cause for a declaration of cyber warfare? Because there has been recent attacks in hospitals that have been ransomware, and they weren't able to provide care.
Yeah. So, again, you have to compare what happened to the definition. While it's hard to attribute who exactly did it, a lot of people have an idea even if they can't perfectly prove it. So, in that case, if you look at what constitutes an act of war, can it be lethal? Yeah, like you said, preventing medical care can be lethal. Is it instrumental? What's the purpose? I think that also plays into it, but we don't know. Are they just trying to make a quick buck, or are they truly trying to cause this type of destruction? Because as you know, ransomware, what's the term for them? Hackers can fall into one of two suites. People who will give you the key after you pay them the money, and people who won't. So if you pay them and they give it right away, I'm not exactly sure, because at that point their only purpose was to make money, not cause significant harm. But if they take your money and their whole point was actually to leave it like that, but to make you think you could get it back and never give you the key, then potentially I think it could fall under that, a cybersecurity act of war. Does that answer your question? Or, all right. Anybody else? All right.
All right, thanks, Elijah. Thanks for an awesome presentation.
No problem.
Okay, give me a second. I'll be presenting next on Windows Event Viewer.